Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, this is the Piracy Show, and today, bounty hunting, the Hawk, the Cutlass Blue, and of course the Avenger Stalker. Now, bounty hunting itself is kind of a touchy topic with certain people. And, it's kind of a funny one to discuss because, early on in the game's development, as things were, being shaken out, details were slowly beginning to arrive about the expected structure of how things would work in the Star Citizen universe. Bounty hunting, prisoners, that sort of thing has always been kind of vague. And I think intentionally so, because there's kind of there's the quick answer crowd who are like, well, bounty hunting, if a player is being evil, if he's being naughty, then we should be able to hold him prisoner forever, to dissuade this type of antisocial behavior. Yet you're dealing with a game where Chris Roberts, the Dread Pirate Roberts, that whole shtick, all these things, and this idea from the very beginning that it was an open world PvP game, or open world PvP in a game, not an open world PvP game exclusively, got to make that distinction. But, ignoring all those facts, there are certain people out there who've wanted to turn the bounty hunting system into basically like a hostage system. Like, oh, if this player is being a pirate, then I can hold him hostage. And, it's always kind of funny, from the pirate point of view, to hear those kinds of posts, because you kind of go, yeah, but you're aware that that's a sword that cuts both ways, don't you know? Because you might be able to hold me prisoner in a jail, but I'm able to capture you and sell you to Banu slavers, and that's it for you, right? And so it's always like this funny thing to when you talk about it, and generally it can get quite heated on the forums, and it always has. But pushing that aside, looking at functionality, looking at ideas of how to make the bounty hunting system rewarding and interesting. And that's one of the most important things, is it has to be interesting. Now, the missions that we have in game now, like the one that I'm doing right now, are rudimentary. Go here, pick something up, deliver it to here, get paid. Whoopie-doo. No real big challenge there. It's just going through the motions. And a lot of games ultimately have mission systems that are pretty much like this. I mean, they might write you up a little blurb of text and say, oh, this person is a bandit. Go to, Chelin and capture him and return him to us, and, justice will be done, and we all, go, okay, yeah, whatever, collect my money, and we go do the next thing, and it's not all that interesting. But within the framework of Star Citizen, there is room to make it a lot more interesting, at least in my mind. So I would like to kind of outline with, what we see in the game right now. I would kind of like to outline what my idea of the bounty hunting system should be. Now, for the sake of simplicity, let's use the Avenger Stalker, because that's the bounty hunter ship that's in game now, right? Of course, Cutlass Blue, probably the next one that we're going to see. Hawk down the road, no real concrete information. But let's say you're in your Avenger Stalker, and you go to Port Olisar, and maybe there's a law enforcement booth there, and it's, here are all the bounty hunting missions. Okay, so you will probably have a whole bunch of missions that are kind of simple. Go here, capture this guy, bring him back, get your reward. You're going to need to have missions like that no matter what you do, because there are going to be people who play the game who maybe only have an hour and a half to play at any given time. They only really have that much time to put into it before they have other responsibilities in the real world. So you're going to need missions like that. But I think that there should be other missions, missions where the bounties are much, much higher, but it's because they can't give you a location for the person that you're trying to find. So, how do you find that person? Well, in the end, everyone kind of has to interact with technology. Here, there, everywhere, whether it's a mission booth, whether it's a trade booth, whether it's landing services or whatever. And there are comm array satellites that are supposed to link a lot of these systems throughout the solar system. Now, you could possibly say go to another player who is a hacker, who has a herald, and say, listen, I need you to go to XYZ satellite and upload this program onto that satellite so that, it'll start looking for any telltale signs of this person showing up, and then send me back that information. That's what I would really like to see in games. Not just the rudimentary go here, grab person A, deliver them to location B. I would like to see a bit more of a cat and mouse game if you're willing to put the time in, of course. Have missions out there for the people who, only log on for an hour. They say, hey, I just want to have some fun, want to be a bounty hunter, but I don't want to get too deep into it, or I don't want to have these, long protracted gameplay sessions. Whereas people who are really deep into it and who want to say over a couple of days, maybe put this all together, maybe a couple hours a day they're playing, and they want to have sort of one much more immersive adventure or event, then they can do that. And of course the reward would be commensurate with the effort that they put into it. Something like that, something that would enrich the system and make it deeper. But I mean, even for, like, let's say a player gets captured and gets turned into the authorities, right? A very real possibility for some of us. What system should we have in place to get that player out of jail, so to speak? And I think that you could really do some super interesting stuff with that system if you really look at all the facilities that you're building and kind of bring them together. Now, the Herald is a ship that I've been wanting to do a show on ever since 3.0 came out for a while. I really wanted to go deep dive on the Herald, but the truth is the Herald just keeps killing me right now. So we'll stick a pin in that one and we'll come back to it later. But one of the things that the Herald, of course, is, reputed for is its hacking ability. Of course, it's an information runner, but it's also used by hackers. It's used for various nefarious purposes within the PU. One of the things that you could do as a hacker is, let's say someone's in prison and you want to get them out of prison. You could falsify release orders. You could delete any evidence against them, thereby making it so that they have to be released. And that could be interesting gameplay as well. That could be interesting in-depth gameplay. Let's say maybe there's like a hardware lock that you need to generate a certain code sequence to legitimize false orders that you've created. And in order to get that, you have to go out somewhere and hack into a shipping system and have these hardware locks shipped to you rather than their proper destination. And after you do that, they only have a certain lifespan before the authorities recognize that they're forged or they're falsified, and all those keys that you stole then get, basically taken out of play. And so that's like a resource that a hacker would have to replenish, and then that's a service that they could sell on to other players. They could do things like lowering crime stat that way. They could do things like maybe acquiring certain information for other players, or maybe even going in and, say, reading the shipping manifests of certain ships that are in the area, and so knowing where the really valuable cargoes are being moved and then sell that information on. But relative to players being in prison, you could do some really interesting stuff with that, with a system like that, for getting them out of prison in kind of a bloodless way. Of course, maybe someone would attempt a brute force solution to that problem, but I think that, having the more elegant bloodless way is also something that a lot of people would desire. So I think that when you look at the bounty system and you bring in all these different parts of the Star Citizen universe, you can do some really interesting stuff with it. In the end, though, those are just some of my ideas, just some broad ideas of things that I would personally like to see in game in terms of the bounty system. And, you know, some like a system that works both ways, that cuts both ways, because at the same time, you know, let's say criminal players could also capture a bounty hunter and sell them to the Banu, and then they would have to go through the same process. But I think it would be an interesting way to kind of draw in different ships, different functions, and build a richer experience. But the truth is that we're still a long ways away from seeing this. I mean, we're now, you know, we now have a rudimentary, a very basic trading system in game. This is nowhere near the trading system that we are going to have. We're a ways away from that. And so to look at something like the bounty system, which is definitely a little bit more niche and probably something that is not going to come to fruition for probably the better part of a couple of years. I mean, realistically, it depends. If NPCs get in the game, we might start to see, you know, let's say there's NPCs at ground missions. You might get missions to go out and capture those NPCs. But to do that, you would still need a mechanic for either knocking them out if you want to take them alive, so set phasers to stun, that sort of thing. And then you're going to have a mechanic for carrying that body, putting it in the pod, bringing it to the authorities. There's a lot of little things that need to come together before something like that can be delivered. And of course, there are other things coming up as well. We've been getting a lot of hints that the Reclaimer is just around the corner, but we haven't heard anything about the salvage system yet. And so there are bigger systems that we're still waiting for, and so we may not see a lot of development in terms of a bounty system anytime soon. However, we might see something rudimentary and something basic turn up in, you know, with the Cutlass Blue or with the Hawk, depending on when those ships arrive. But for the near future, probably not. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.